Damon Trammell Doty was already 2 years behind when he started high school.
I was one of the kids that stayed in trouble. I was one of the kids that fought, and I basically didn't care about school.
Tanisha Wright had her own problems.
Well, I was pregnant when I first ended my freshman year, and no, I did not think I was going to make it.
Kimberly Perez lost her grandmother.
I decided that nobody can tell me what to do or how to do things, and that came along with referrals, detention. I got in trouble all the time. I smarted off. I didn't let teachers say nothing to me. I didn't care at that point.
But each of these young people got help and did not become part of Louisiana's dropout dilemma. The latest report by Louisiana's Public Affairs Research Council, also known as PAR, says state efforts to combat the dropout problem are moving in a positive direction, while the national trend is either stagnant or declining. An exact measurement of the dropout rate is unavailable, but Louisiana and other states track two sets of numbers. And according to PAR, the true measure of the problem lies somewhere between the two. First, there's the cohort graduation rate. Debbie Shum, head of college and career readiness with Louisiana's Department of Education, defines that.
Students who enter a high school for the first time as a ninth grader and 4 years later are able to graduate. So, for example, if a student population of 500 students entered a high school for the first time, and then 4 years later, only 350 of those students were left for graduation and made it to the graduation goal, then the rate would be determined by taking that 350 students that are there and dividing it by the 500 that originally started.
For Louisiana's class of 2008, the most recent year for which we have national numbers, the cohort graduation rate was 63.5%. The national average was about 75%, with only Nevada and the District of Columbia having lower rates than Louisiana. But the state says the class of 2010 improved to 67.4%. However, that does not mean that more than 30% of students dropped out.
In some cases, the students are still in the school because they are actually attending the school but did not exit 4 years from when they entered.
Or they may have continued their education elsewhere.
Or they could have left and transferred to another school, or they could have left and gone to a GED program and gotten a GED and completed, because a GED does not count as an actual graduation cohort number.
The state can account for nearly 16% of each year's cohort through transfers, GED program enrollment, homeschooling, and the juvenile justice system. Add that to the graduation rate, and you're left with a dropout rate in 2010 of 17%. The second number Louisiana tracks is called the event dropout rate.
The number of students who started, who were enrolled in that school at the beginning of the year, but at the end of that year, they were no longer enrolled, and there was no legitimate, what we call a legitimate leaver. They did not legitimately move to another school in the district. They did not move to another school in another district, and we'd have no record of where those students are.
During the 2010 school year, for example, the event dropout rate was 4.6%, an improvement from 1996 when it was 11.6%, and 2008 when it was 7.5%. Scott Hughes, executive director of the Alliance for Education in Northwest Louisiana, takes issue with the process currently being used to measure high school dropouts. He says it ignores the biggest part of the problem.
In Louisiana, with our 8th grade high-stakes test, we lose more kids between 8th and 9th grade than we do between any other grade in the process. And so if we don't start counting the graduation rate till 9th grade, we're missing the largest gap where kids don't make it between 8th and 9th grade.
But the event dropout rates do give a snapshot of when and where students are dropping out. The highest percentage overall is in 9th grade, with North Louisiana districts, urban and rural, exhibiting some of the highest numbers. Hughes says the problem really hits home in Shreveport.
We discovered that we have about a 50% graduation rate in this community, 8th grade.
John Warner Smith is the CEO of Education's Next Horizon, a public-private initiative with a mission of making education the top priority in Louisiana. He says Louisiana's dropout problem disproportionately affects minorities as well.
When you begin to look in the subgroups, look at African American and Hispanic students, those numbers, the graduation rate drops dramatically. In Louisiana, roughly half of African American students don't graduate. So it's a serious problem.
The National Center for Education Statistics, a division of the Federal Department of Education, finds that on average a high school dropout earns $19,000 less each year than someone with a high school diploma or GED. In addition, the average high school dropout is associated with costs to the economy of approximately $240,000 over his or her lifetime in terms of lower tax contributions, higher reliance on Medicaid and Medicare, higher rates of criminal activity, and higher reliance on welfare.
And long term, the community can't survive if less than half our kids are graduating.
Louisiana's legislature has set a goal of improving the high school graduation rate to 80% for the class of 2014. State and local education officials are using a multifaceted approach to try and get there. For the Southern Education Desk, I'm Sue Lincoln reporting.